Greetings, people of the interwebs. Jake here, and I just got done seeing the movie Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. So, this was probably one of the most anticipated movies of the year. Not necessarily because I think there was it was this great hype for me. It was more out of curiosity, just because the visuals were just absolutely stunning and gorgeous, and I was really impressed by the first trailer. And the other subsequent trailers as well I thought were really good. Or at least very intriguing. Like, again, enough to kind of keep piquing my interest to make me want to go see this movie. So, I wouldn't say my... Because here's the thing. After seeing the movie, I'm still not entirely sure the best way to, I guess, describe this movie. Because being one of my most anticipated movies of the year, though more out of curiosity than me just kind of being, like, almost like a Star Wars level. Like, Last Jedi is incredibly anticipated because it's Star Wars, and, Force Awakens was fantastic, really liked Rogue One, and the trailer for Last Jedi looked amazing. So not that level of anticipation. So, after leaving the theater, I will say this, it may not have reached my expectations, to a degree, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily let down either. So, I guess I'll just kind of start off from the beginning and hopefully maybe make sense of my thoughts on the movie. So basically, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets is based on a French graphic novel from the 60s. It actually influenced Star Wars, George Lucas and him creating Star Wars and tons of other sci-fi properties. So I can definitely see how Star Wars and all these other sci-fi properties were just heavily influenced by Valerian, just based off the movie. Haven't read the graphic novel, but I think after seeing the movie, I'd definitely be willing to check out the graphic novel to see, one, just how it compares, and also to see, just kind of get more from this world. Because that is one thing that I think this movie did really well, is I love the world and the universe, the aliens and creatures they created for the movie. All that looked just absolutely spectacular. And the very beginning of the movie, I would say the first half was really, really kind of what I was expecting. Great, just beautiful, absolutely stunning visuals that are, again, I would say Avatar level visuals, just, again, absolutely beautiful. They just looked very realistic, and I like the use of CGI with practical effects. The CGI, for the most part, all looked great, especially the... I don't know why I can't remember the race of the aliens, but they're the kind of humanoid-looking ones that you see in the trailer, that they live on, that kind of island paradise-like world. Those aliens I thought looked fantastic. The CG, because they're predominantly CG, probably motion capture. But then there's some other aliens that are probably a use of puppetry and animatronics with a little bit of CG to touch it up. Those all looked fantastic as well. Now some of the more grander set pieces and all that were completely all CGI, but all of it still looked pretty good. So the two leads, Cara Delevingne and Dane DeHaan, I thought were fine. They weren't great by any means, and their chemistry not that great. And that's kind of supposed to be one of the big things about this movie, is the chemistry between these two characters. Not just because they're partners, but there's kind of this love interest thing between them. It's not necessarily just kind of flaunting their I don't know, it's not a typical romance that you would see in a movie, which I guess isn't entirely a bad thing, but there just wasn't a whole lot of chemistry between the two actors, and I don't know if a lot of that is just because a lot of the environments that they're surrounded in is all green screen and CGI, or if maybe just the two actors themselves just didn't quite connect. Although that being said, it didn't quite take me out of the movie, because honestly that's one of my smaller nitpicks or complaints with the movie, is the chemistry between the characters, because that's not necessarily the important thing for me. what I was really going into this movie to see was just the grand scale visuals, the sci-fi action, and again, all that stuff. I thought the movie delivered, and the some of the things that didn't work though, I'll say some more things. I guess more on the negatives is the humor did not work at all in this movie, and I don't know if that's because Luc Besson is French and maybe that was more of like the kind of French humor and I don't know. Maybe that's one of the reasons why the humor didn't work. Because like some of the mannerisms or something like that, or maybe it's just he maybe just isn't the best at writing humor. But again, that's for me. That's really more of a minor nitpick. Like it didn't really take me out of the movie or anything like that. It just didn't work for me. So there are definitely some things about this movie that I really liked, and then there's some things that didn't quite work. Not to say I outright disliked it or hated it. It's just that it didn't quite work. So the first half of this movie I think starts off very pretty promising, very strong with just kind of introducing you to Alpha, which is the city of 1,000 planets, and kind of its just brief history of this I don't know, I guess it's like a bit of a space station, like this massive space station of all these different alien races and cultures all combined, but it also has different atmospheres or the proper environments for all the different alien races. Like one of the levels is all underwater for the underwater aliens and all that stuff. Some of them, so basically it's accommodating for all the different races and aliens and all that. So that was really cool, and basically the opening of the movie I thought was really interesting because it basically shows humans going into space for the first time and building space stations, and then it starts off as just this space station and all the different races of Earth kind of meeting each other, greeting each other in this space station, and just kind of like, cool, we're all coming together as humans to build this universal space station where we can all get together, share technology and cultures and all that stuff, and then progressively as the years pass on, that's when aliens start to visit, and once they kind of visit Alpha, the humans, like, I guess that's one thing that I really like about this movie is I like the fact that, and again, I know it's obviously based on source material, but I feel like other movies, this could have easily been something where like the aliens come in and there's like some kind of culture clash, and that kind of leads to problems, whereas in this, it's kind of this almost quick, I don't want to quite say montage, but it is almost in that same style where basically just, scene by scene, you see different aliens and races and creatures and stuff like that coming to this space station, and they're all kind of, shaking hands and greeting each other, and that, presumably is what leads to Alpha becoming the city of 1,000 planets, because you have all these different races and creatures and aliens and all that stuff just coming together to, again, share their culture, share their technology, and it just becomes this very prosperous civilization in a way. So that's what I really liked about the beginning of this movie is, again, it's just kind of exploring, setting up Alpha, and we're just kind of introducing us to all the different creatures and all that. And also I like that the beginning is more seeing Valerian and Laureline, who are the two main characters, just kind of off on an adventure. I thought that was actually kind of cool, seeing them just going off on an adventure on this alien world and just having a cool adventure in space. So those are the things that I think really worked for this movie. But then about midway through, the movie doesn't necessarily take a turn for the worst and get bad. I just think it becomes more of like a generic kind of blockbuster movie. Basically I think the big turning point is when Rihanna's character gets introduced, which, first off, when she comes into the movie, it's this weird pole dancing sequence, and it just kind of feels like it came out of nowhere. Like, it's almost like Luc Besson was just kind of like, well, hey, you're a singer, you're a dancer, do that for like a good 5 minutes. So it's just her and her alien race. I think like they're called clam pods or something like that, and basically they can just shapeshift. And so that like it's kind of a cool sequence, just seeing like her and just kind of almost like Mystique, how she can just at the snap of a finger change into a different person or a different outfit and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool just seeing that, but it was just so really out of place, and I feel like it was a little jarring just because the whole reason he's going to this character, Bubble, is the name of Rihanna's character, is he needs a shapeshifter in order to get into the certain part of Alpha. And so that's fine. Like I understand like why he would have to go to a shapeshifting alien to do that, but I feel like the scene for Rihanna's character to show that she's a shapeshifter, I don't know, I just feel like they could have done that a little bit better instead of like this 5-minute dance sequence where she's just dancing around and changing outfits and all that stuff. So I don't know. It was kind of like, I feel like if this was just a music video, it would have been kind of cool. But that's really all it seemed. It's just kind of like you have this movie, and then at this midway point, you have this music video that's kind of just inserted it into the middle, and then like he kind of, after her performance, he's just kind of like, hey, I need you to help me save my partner. And she's just kind of like, yeah, okay, why not? So thankfully she didn't have a whole lot of dialogue in this movie, because Rihanna's not a very good actress. She can perform well, I'll give her that, like, though her dance sequence was really completely unnecessary. She did good, I'll give her that. But then she kind of just follows him around, and I don't know, like, I just feel like that was the big turning point for this movie, where things just kind of change up almost entirely, where it becomes like this really just fun space action adventure movie to, like, they're trying to uncover the mystery of what happened to this alien race. Basically their planet is blown up, and there's a conspiracy, so they're trying to figure out the conspiracy of why the planet was blown up and why, like, they can't find any information on it. I'm not going to go into too much detail because, I don't want to spoil anything, but oddly enough, I feel like the premise, I think, for this whole conspiracy is kind of cool, but I just feel like they didn't maybe execute it right. Or they didn't put enough, they didn't flesh it out enough. It's kind of just fun space adventure, Rihanna dance sequence. I mean, obviously, there's they're building up to the whole conspiracy thing, but I feel like that's the halfway point is really when they start to kind of focus in on that. And I feel like if they had just, I don't know, this is where my feelings get a little, I guess, mixed, because again, even though the last half is not bad, it just kind of feels a little bit more generic, kind of blockbustery, and the villain I thought was a little weak, because you kind of see it coming pretty early on, so I mean, I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing, 'cause it is a lot of these big blockbuster movies. It's kind of easy to the villain, you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, they're the villain. This is why they're doing this. So it was a little, I don't know, yeah, it's generic, but I guess we kind of have learned to expect that from a lot of these movies, for better or worse. Well, worse. So yeah, after it gets more into the second act, or the second half of the movie rather, yeah, there's still a few cool action sequences and stuff like that, but as a whole, I feel like that's just kind of when it starts to drift off, and maybe, I don't know, it doesn't lose focus, but it's not great either. So I don't know. It's really hard to kind of do this review just because I'm still not entirely sure I guess the best way to explain this movie, not just to like prevent spoilers, but just because again, it's on one hand, again, there were a lot of things I really liked about this movie, and then there are some other things that, again, not necessarily I just outright disliked. It just didn't quite work. It didn't all like it didn't flow together really well. It's almost like they're kind of two separate movies in the same world that are kind of just stuck together with a weird, you know, music video kind of thing to split them apart. Although, all this being said, like, I imagine this isn't exactly a glowing endorsement for the movie. I'll still say I had fun in this movie, and I would still actually recommend a lot of people to go see this. Because, again, just for the visuals alone, I think it's worth, seeing them, maybe, if not, like, full price, go to, like, a matinee one afternoon when you're not doing anything, and just kind of get yourself a big box or bowl, popcorn, whatever, and just kind of sit back and enjoy it. Obviously not great, but again, at the same time, I'm not entirely let down either, so I guess that's a good thing. But yeah, so Valerian and City of a Thousand Planets, I'd still recommend to go see it, even though I imagine this probably isn't the best review or endorsement for the movie. But again, there are things to really like about this movie, and I would actually like to see more in this world. So imagine, I would think there's more in the series, like in the graphic novel, like this, that the movie isn't basically just the whole series into a movie, or maybe Luc Besson wants to turn this into a trilogy. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think that's going to happen, though, because this movie was like on a $200 million budget, and honestly, I feel like even if this movie was really good and got a good word of mouth, it still probably wouldn't make its budget back, just because unless you're like a Marvel movie or Star Wars, those are probably some of the few movies where you can make it for like a $200 budget and make your money back. So I don't see this movie making its budget back. I don't necessarily think it'll be a massive flop either. Maybe, I mean, it might. I don't know. But I think at least enough people will, saw the trailers and were like, oh, this movie looks like it could be really cool and interesting. Again, just based off the visuals. So I'm hoping that, like, just the curiosity will pique people's interest enough to go see the movie. So that way it at least, again, doesn't just turn into a, disaster at the box office. But yeah, I don't see this making its budget back. And also, it's kind of a hard movie to sell, which I think is part of the reason with the trailers is most people that I've talked to kind of had the same reaction where they're like, huh, that's interesting. But nothing like to where you're kind of like, oh my god, I have to go see this movie. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess those are my thoughts on Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. May not be the greatest movie, but I still recommend people to check it out, because it is really enjoyable. And one part of me thinks this maybe could have made a better TV series, which, granted, I imagine would be hard to do just because of the epic scale of it, with, again, all these creatures and planets and all that stuff. But I feel like just from a storytelling perspective, it would have flowed better as, like, say, a 10-episode series on, like a streaming series like Netflix or something, or, Showtime or HBO, where they can afford to do a bigger budget show. Like, again, the movie, like, the story worked fine enough, but I just feel like it would have worked a lot better as a TV show. But again, I imagine it was, I guess, easier to pitch as a movie than a TV show, but and I know Luc Besson has been a huge fan of this series. He actually wanted to do this movie back in the 90s, but obviously the technology didn't exist, so he did The Fifth Element, which is very similar in style, which I really like. The Fifth Element in this movie is kind of reminiscent of that, or, vice versa, since Fifth Element was kind of his version, or I guess original kind of version of Valerian, so to speak. So I like the fact that he was super passionate about this, and I think even put in a lot of his own money to basically fund this movie. So, a lot of respect for the guy for being really passionate about this, and I understand why. Just based on what I saw from the movie, I imagine the graphic novel is just it's so much better and more in depth. So, again, I'm really intrigued to check out the graphic novel. Hopefully, I'll really enjoy it and kind of be like, oh, okay, now I get why he wanted to make this into this grand epic space opera. So that wraps up this review. Actually, before related to Valerian, so I'll actually be doing a guest spot on Jordan here of Pasty Pale and a good friend of ours, Phil, their podcast, Mild Mannered Movie Men. I'll be a guest spot on their review of Valerian probably in the next week or so. So this, we'll go more in depth, and hopefully I'll be able to figure out how I feel about this movie a little bit better by then. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description below to their podcasts. That way you can check it out. They're on Podbean, iTunes. I think they might be on some other apps as well, like podcasting apps, but I think it's mostly iTunes and Podbean. But like I said, I'll leave a link in the description below so you can check that out. And then also I'll be on Mild Mannered Movie Men doing the Game of Thrones Season 7 recap as well. We've already done Episode 1, so that's on their Podbean page right now on iTunes, so if you've been following Game of Thrones and you're a huge fan, definitely check that out, and check out the Valerian review, and just go check out their podcast, because it's really good anyways, and they're good friends of ours. So yeah. You can also like us on Facebook, Pasty Pale Productions, follow us on Twitter at Pasty Pale Pro. You can follow me at Irishman Jake, and also my podcast, Shogun's Gateway to Anime, which is all about anime. You can find that on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud. I think that's all we have it on right now. And also, gonna try and get the Planet of the Apes review we did last week up, but I had some trouble with editing, so that's why we haven't uploaded that yet. So hopefully later this weekend I'll be able to have that, and maybe some videos just about me going over some of the stuff that dropped at Comic-Con. So hopefully there'll be plenty of new content for you all. But that wraps up this video, so hopefully you all have enjoyed. And until next time, cheers.